for the former Yugoslavia. And the chief prosecutor, Serge Brammertz, is here. He's sitting on the end. And Serge, would you kindly tell us about your court and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, a few words about the ICTY tribunal. The tribunal is 15 years old, was set up in the early 90s after the conflict in former Yugoslavia, as you probably remember, wars in Croatia, in Bosnia, in Kosovo. In those 15 years, 161 persons have been indicted, important number has been convicted, several have been acquitted, and today 7 cases are still ongoing, involving more than 20 accused. 2 persons are still at large, Mr. Mladic and Mr. Hadžić, but as you probably know, the tribunal had a very important moment when a few weeks ago Mr. Karadzic was arrested. Perhaps two words in relation to his arrest. It was really an extremely important moment for a tribunal, as I said, existing for 50 years already. Started up for a very limited period. Nobody was expecting this tribunal working for so many years. People were thinking it would take a few years to have the perpetrators arrested, prosecuted, convicted. But de facto it took much longer. One of the reasons being that it was not easy in the early days to find evidence. Evidence was very often taken away by political leaders, and it was only peu à peu, when the political regimes changed, when different persons were in power, that cooperation increased and documents were handed over. For many years, people indicted were fugitives, as for Mladic and Karadzic, which are the most known ones. They have been fugitives for 30 years. So it was a very big moment, big success for the tribunal when Karadzic was arrested. And we have spoken this morning about the victims, and this was really when I got the phone call by the president of Serbia saying that it's reality. He has been arrested. He's sitting in custody. I was immediately thinking about my first visit to the region. Personally, I only started at the Yugoslav Tribunal in January this year. So for me, it was a quite new experience after having worked before 2 years in Lebanon, working on terrorist assassinations in Lebanon, and before 2 years at the ICC. So for me, it was a quite new experience, and my first visit was to Bosnia, where I met with an organization called the Mothers of Srebrenica. It's a group of women, and her sons, husbands, fathers have been executed, as you know, up to 8,000 young boys and men, and have been killed by Serbian authorities during this conflict. And when I was informed about the arrest of Karadzic, I really was thinking about my first meeting with this group of people, because it was their main concern to say, for us, it's daily work, daily concerns. Every morning, every day, we're thinking about our loved ones. Every day we have the financial problems because our men are not there, and we see that the international community has the tendency somehow to forget. As a tribunal, we are in the so-called completion strategy. The Security Council wanted us to close down the tribunal in 2010, but of course with this arrest, things may change. Only to say that this arrest of Karadzic is so important for the victims, so important for the tribunal, and also so important for international justice. We have discussed this morning the issue Sudan, which is of course extremely complicated because we speak about a head of state still in power. In the 90s, it was also have been a little bit difficult to imagine that Milosevic, Mladic, Karadzic would be arrested very easily because they were still powerful persons in the region. So those days, it's easier in this regard. What next? As I said, we are working on the completion strategy. So in 2 years, 3 years' time, the tribunal will close its doors. Still 2 fugitives at large, mainly Mladic, where we are very much relying on the international community to have these persons arrested. As our chairperson said, we don't have our own army, we don't have police services, we are cooperating with sovereign states, and they need the political will to arrest fugitives. So what we strongly hope is that with the new government in Serbia, And with the European Union and the United States and others still keeping some positive pressure on the Serbian authorities, that they will also be successful in arresting the remaining fugitives to bring aid to good end. Last element I would perhaps say as a kind of introduction is that what is as important as a tribunal itself and our achievements is what will happen after the tribunal. We are very much investing those days in capacity building in the region. 15 years ago it was impossible to imagine that prosecutors in Bosnia, Serbia or Croatia would be able to conduct themselves war crimes investigations. And we all know this would have been the best solution, because for victims, for public opinion, it's so important to see justice being done. Having justice being done in The Hague by Western people, by experts, it's very difficult to translate this or to have this understood by public opinion in the region. So what we are trying to do is to have much more prosecutors from the region involved in our work, training much more prosecutors in the region, because I strongly believe that ultimately the success of the ad hoc tribunals will also depend on our ability to transfer the remaining cases to the region, where there will be hundreds of cases for the next 10-20 years against lower level perpetrators. And this is, if I may say, one of my frustrations somehow, having worked at the ICC, having been in several African countries, having been in Lebanon for 2 years, and now working with countries in former Yugoslavia, that a lot of attention is, for the good reasons, put on international structures, is put even on national war crimes prosecutors, but that strengthening the judiciary in those countries is very often not at the top priority. And this is really one area where I think that we as international prosecutors are somehow also the representatives of all those local prosecutors, because justice is not only about war crimes and international crimes. Justice starts in local villages, local towns, and goes up to the international level, of course. But I would stop here as an introduction, and looking forward to our discussions.
Thank you.